Bow, bow, bow. All right. I'm a little tired, but I'm here. And we will see if anyone joins. If not, it's all good. So, what has been the haps? Well, I've been designing still. Here and there, jumping on, trying to create some magic. No, I've been just trying to figure some stuff out with this sort of like new impromptu TTRPG I've been working on that I'm really liking. I'm really enjoying the process so far. And what we got? So, if you go down into the description section, there is a link to a Notion page. And that Notion page will take you to the current notes on it. As a disclaimer, I guess you could say, I've got it pretty much down to the character creation section. Right? Like that first part, I feel pretty good. You get to the character creation section, and that's where I'm at right now. But I want to note a couple things. Let me actually just pull up the page. Here we go. This has been really fun for me because the way I formatted this to me is it's almost like a journal for me as a designer. And so that's kind of cool because if you're going through it, you'll see, right off the bat, I give you some of my influences, and I probably need to update this because there's probably a couple more influences that made it. But as you're going through the rules, you'll have these little drop downs. And so I tried to make the rules sections really tight, meaning I was fast and loose with a lot of terms. So it's like if you are an experienced gamer, tabletop role player, then most of those terms you get. And so no problem. But if you're newer to tabletop role playing, that's where this kind of section is here. You can do this little drop down, and there's a little bit more explanation. Then I have this little drop down for each of these sections where it's like, what are my influences? What games did I kind of pull some of these ideas from? Which is, I think that's good to know. And then some design notes, like what are some things as to why the choices were made, right? And so I hope it's kind of fun for people that are really, I think that people that have dug my channel in the past, the reason you came and you kept coming back is because we talked design, right? And you have the same itch that you're trying to scratch in your brain, which is designing. The other thing to note in here is anytime you see red, that's me still contemplating, me still thinking about something, right? It's nothing's finalized in this whole thing, but that's me kind of like, do I need it, right? So, as you're going through this, if you do go through this, I would love to hear some feedback, some thoughts on some of these red sections. So, let me skip down a little bit. And the nice thing is on Notion, you've got this nice little table of contents you can always go in. I've had some issues with using Notion, but overall, I like the web production of it. So that's why I'm using it, so that people can be interactive with me. People can jump on here and do some stuff. Wounds, I think that at this point in time, I might as well just write it in. Let's go ahead and let's switch over and write it in real quick. Bum, 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 bum. Going to the wounds. All right. I think at this point in time that I'm probably going to go more towards the Cosmere wound system, but not use their suggested wounds, right? So let me pull up some stuff real quick. It's a live stream. It's not. You gotta just deal. You gotta deal with my brain and my pauses, right? I just couldn't. I haven't been able to record videos lately because I just don't want to script anything anymore. Let's be honest. Scripting's boring. And I want to work on my own stuff. And so I figured I'm gonna take a page out of Terran's book over at Indestructible and just do some live streams and just ramble. And if people show up, they show up. All right. Let's see here. Injuries. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste some stuff over. Actually, one second. Let me do this. So here is one thing, and then here's the other. Oop. And then here's the other thing, and we'll talk about it. And we'll talk about it. Bum, bum, bum. This is where Notion sometimes gets a little wonky. I want these side by side because I think it looks better. Okay, perfect. Now we stole it, and we'll talk about it. So the way that things end up working in, let me zoom you in here. I can't really zoom in Notion. That's a problem. I'll just have to talk it out. I can do this. I can make things bigger. So we will no longer put them side by side so that we can zoom them in and talk about them. Wah, wah. Holy schmoly. Okay, too big. So what we need to know about Cosmere is that when you reach the point of getting knocked out or losing all your hit points or whatever the wound system is, or the health system is in Cosmere, then what you do is you roll a d20. And there's all these modifiers that you have, but in essence, you're trying to get higher is better on the d20. And if you get low, then bad stuff happens. So what you'll see here is there's a little chart at the bottom here that, and there's all kinds of modifiers to that die. So if you roll your d20, you're going to have your armor value modifies the dice roll, so it's going to make it go up. Abilities might make it go up, etc. And you end up rolling, and it's like, oh, if you get a flesh wound, and this injury table here is just telling you how long the injury lasts, right? It doesn't tell you the severity of the injury. It's kind of the severity is just cooked into it's permanent. This is all just duration and time, right? And then down here, you have what are the kinds of injuries you might have, right? And it tells you in the rules, it says, look, you don't need to roll this. You pick the one, like if the person gets hit in the leg, right? You might not just be like, oh, you're exhausted. Like, it doesn't make sense. You might just pick you're slowed, right? So you can just say, look, you're slowed. But you're slowed now for potentially 66 days, right? So those injuries are dramatic in that sense, right? And then what happens is if you are knocked out in subsequent times, every time you get knocked out, you're going to accrue another injury. And every injury you have makes you subtract 5 from your d20 roll. And if you ever get a -6 or lower, you're dead, right? So what's nice about that is that it pretty much means it's impossible for you to die the first time you get knocked out. And it means that it's impossible for you to die the second time you get knocked out. The third time you get knocked out, now we're in trouble, right? Because now you've got a -10, and now you can actually get to -6. And odds are, if you've got good armor, it might be the second time you get knocked out's also not a problem, but maybe the third time you get knocked out's not a problem, but maybe the fourth time, right? So that's the mechanic for the Cosmere system. And we're going to use that as the base in your face. We're going to use that as the base for this system, right? And we'll call it, I like wounds. I like injury. Well, this is what we're talking about, right? Oh, injuros. This is what we're talking about in terms of like, there are certain things I'm leaving red because I'd be curious what people think, right? And we'll skip around to some of the other stuff that's still red in a little bit. So let's do a little writing. We'll change this to, and I'm just going to do bullet points right now because I clean it up later, right? We get all the bullet points now. We get the idea down, and then we can bullet point it out later. So what are we doing? When you are knocked out, which is a term, you are going to roll something. And receive an injury. I like this concept that the roll is how severe the injury is, meaning how long it's going to last. That's pretty cool, right? Now, the question is, how... So it's like here, these effects, I don't know what disoriented and surprised means in this game system, right? So I do know what my conditions mean in this game system, and having some of those conditions for 66 days would suck, right? So this is where, is duration going to be the factor? Probably, it has to be, right? The roll results in a duration of injury. Okay, perfect. I think that's fine. My durations are going to be very different than theirs. It's not going to be 66 days because some of those conditions could suck. It also could be, so then that's to be said, right? Then the GM describes the condition or rolls for it. This is an ongoing sort of debate in my brain for this game system, is how much you don't have to roll for things, or how much you don't have to decide, quote unquote, things, but you roll for it, right? As a GM. Because I think that there's something to that. As long as it's quick and easy, and it's easily referenceable, and I'm probably going to end up doing little cards, like a little reference card, like a board game reference card, where the GM has a little front and back reference card with some very quick information. And I've already got that working down on the page. So now we have this idea of, you know what I can do? I can do this. Where is, not small text. Isn't there text size in this? It's been so long since I've worked in Notion. No, there's not. Then the GM rolls a condition, or rolls for it. Yeah, we're going to say the GM rolls for it. You know what, I'm going to do this. Let's do this. The GM selects or rolls for an injury, or monsters have injuries on them that they typically produce. That's a lot of overhead. I think it's probably easier to have injuries in a table than to have a monster thing that's crazy, right? Let's say this. The GM rolls and produces a permanent condition for the player. Then the player and GM together create the aspect or nature of that injury, right? All right, so this is very much like Cosmere, right? There's going to be some sort of roll. Now, I don't know what kind of dice I want yet, right? Maybe triple X's will go around to 2X's. I don't know what kind of dice I want. Maybe it's going to be D20. Maybe it's 2D12. I don't know. Like something fun. I'm going to make it something fun. It should feel fun. And then there's this idea that you're going to roll for the duration of the injury, and you're also going to, this is going to give you the duration of the injury or potential death. Then the GM rolls and produces a permanent condition, right? So there's going to be some sort of permanent condition. We can go look at the conditions in a second. Well, we'll go look right now. So the conditions, I got this nifty little table of contents. Let's go to the conditions. If I can find them. There we go. So once again, areas of red, I would love to hear your thoughts, right? That's a invitation. Let me switch to the other one because I think I can zoom in on this one. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. All right. Let's go to conditions here. So areas of red, would love comments. So I love this idea of having conditions that are counteracting and a little bit more general, right? That they could encompass multiple narratives. So you either have guarded or protected, or you have exposed versus vulnerable, and it does something. You have primed or favored, or you have hindered, and it does something. Empowered versus weakened, et cetera, et cetera. Like, for instance, trapped is a condition that means you can't move, and that could be that you are, somebody's grabbed you, or it could be that Timmy fell in the well. These kind of things. Any of those things is now you are quote unquote trapped. So we're talking about these injuries. It could be that you take an injury, you're not trapped, but you might be weakened, right? Like you are weakened for X amount of time, or you are distracted for X amount of time. So that's what I mean by there's going to be these conditions, and that's what those conditions sort of look like. So back up here, back up to wounds. So now we know that you have some sort of condition. It's a permanent condition, or it's a timed condition based on the duration of the injury. Then the player can come up with an aspect. So, for instance, if I say, you are weakened, now you and the player can say, all right, well, let's look at weakened again. What does that mean? Weakened means, I lost it. Weakened means that my defenses and my skills, it's harder for me to do stuff physically, right? So it might be that the GM says, no, it's just your finesse. All of your finesse skills, you're weakened in just your finesse attribute. So all your dexterous stuff and your quick moving stuff is impaired. So that could be that you got hit on the leg, or your hand is injured, or your wrist is injured, so you're no longer as nimbly-bimbly with the hand. Or if it's the might, maybe you got a little bit of a bruised lung or a bruised rib, and so it makes it really hard for you to do laborious activities. Who knows? You can come up with that narrative, and then you have that little aspect that you can write on there, pneumothorax, therefore weakened. So anyways, okay. So I like that. I like where that's at this point in time. And then there can be I like this mechanic. And once again, right now, this whole game is about hodgepodging a bunch of ideas, but then sprinkling in some new ones on there. But then you have this, this idea that injuries cause minuses. I might put in parentheses. Minuses to subsequent knocked out rolls. Perfect. I think that this is smooth and simple. I really like that system. So I'm down for that. I'm down. So we got wounds versus injuries. We're going to just determine what we like. I lean towards wounds. So this might become the wound system. Let's go ahead and say that. Boom. I like wounds. Now, this needs to be all cleaned up, but for now, we'll have it there. I'm gonna make this all red. That just lets me know, clean this up later. Make it look nice. Full-on sentences. All right, let's go to the other one because it's easier for y'all to read. And we'll skip up. We'll skip up to wounds, and we'll start moving our way down. All right, what else do we need to think about and edit? So I changed some stuff with the action economy. Mainly, I tried to get in some more terms. Oh, we should talk about that. Okay, so I think this feels better. I don't know what the mechanics are for a lot of these. But I think this feels better. But the biggest thing here is I had to make sure that interact was in there, because there was a difference between a free action, which might be interacting with things, quote unquote. I understand. That's like unlocking a door, pulling a lever. Those are free actions. You just do it. And interact requires time and effort, right? So this is like an actual skill check that you're needing to accomplish. And the reason I have this in here is I was actually really excited about this, is that, oh, what's going on, Rel? I saw your video today, buddy. Fireballs, mages. It's got me thinking. I'm gonna be working on powers in this system very soon, so I appreciate you dropping all the knowledge, brother. Back to what I was gonna say. Sorry, the reason I had interact in here is because I read this message today from Mike Merles. Was it Mike Merles? And he said this. He said, role-playing games are designed for GMs. Without them, the game cannot function. When working on a new game, the first question to ask is, why is this fun to run? I thought this was a great comment, because how often when we're creating games, I am very much in this camp that we're thinking about all the cool powers that players have, right? But how often do games fall apart because the GM gets sick of running the game? And so this sentence, why is it fun to run, being sort of like a cornerstone for the design of the game, really made me like pause. And it's funny because right when that happened, I then started thinking about, I've got this momentum system that is for the players, but why can't the GM have that same thing? I mean, and that was what made me started thinking about, okay, what's the momentum equivalent for the Dungeon Master, right? And we have a lot of games with meta currencies these days, right? We have fear in Daggerheart. We have fear and hope, and the GM accrues fear. Once again, gamification. This was one of these videos I made a long time ago, but one of the keys to gamification is toys. Having things for people to play with is a big part of gamification. And so adding fear in Daggerheart makes sense. Adding malice in Draw Steel, it's fun. Runehammer always talks about his skull dice. It's great, right? So if you recall, the momentum system is this idea that players have these D6s that sit in this stamina, and they kind of rotate around, right? These D6s are moving. So you're moving them around, and they're powering your abilities, but at the same time, they're your health. So if they're all fatigued and you get hit, you're knocked out. Like, it's a fun little mini game. Like, it's like a press your luck sort of thing, and you're moving these dice around, and it's fun for the player. So, and to be honest, all the players that played in Scattered Isles that had this momentum system, that was their favorite bit. They loved it. Because one of the things I think is the best part about it is because it's both your meta currency and your health, it feels great as the GM to see someone do something super powerful and badass, and then realize immediately that they are now on the brink of getting knocked out. Because it's like you spent everything. So now you're actually fatigued, and it's the next blow could knock you on your face. And so it's really fun. So let's mirror it, right? It should be 100% mirrored in the GM. So the GM, and I love this because I get to now use the word pressure again. Whereas the players have their momentum, the GM has pressure. And it's the exact same thing. They have a little 3-circle area, right? And it's got not D6s. Instead, well, I mean, most people would play with a D6, but instead of D6s, you would have your skull dice, which are 3 skulls and 3 blanks, and I'm dropping them. I'm getting skulled. And so what happens? You've got these skull dice. The GM now has these skull dice sitting in it, just like the players, but at the top of the round, not the top of their turn. The top of their round, they can move one. They can move it from, I don't know the names yet. You have these 3 names in the players have stamina, power, and fatigue. I don't know what the 3 names yet are for these pressure ones, right? Is one of them like building, and then like, who knows, something else, and then, I don't know. I can't come up with good words for that yet. Once again, if you got words, drop them in the comments somewhere. But the idea being that you have this sort of like building pressure, and then the GM moves it up into this area where now it becomes a resource they can tap into. And then when they use it, it gets spent. Or if the players do things like the interact action, because now let me just go through this. What are the things that move the pressure, right? So the start of the round, The GM's going to move that pressure around. You could have timers. So now the encounter might have little timers, little D4 timers that are turning, and whenever they hit a certain number, boom, that the GM's pressure moves. When monsters roll their tactic dice and they get a shield, which is only 16% chance, but whenever it happens, not only does that monster get tougher to hit, but all of a sudden one of the pressure gets moved, right? So these are cool things that are very thematic. But then the other thing that I thought was great is now you build into the encounter things in the environment that relieve pressure for the players. And so now they are incentivized to, okay, what do I want to do right now? Do I want to hit this monster? Or do I want to mess with the pressure because there's a lot of pressure building? So maybe I go finagle the trap, or, mess with the power converters or whatever. And they're going to have to use that interact action. And what this means is if you go up to action economy, they can still do their attack, because what they could do is they could hurry. And hurry means that now whatever action they're taking is hard, right? So it's like disadvantaged. It's hard, but they can also interact, or they can just straight up interact, right? And they're doing the thing. They make the skill check. They block the doorway. The pressure gets dropped. And what's neat then is that there might be another incentive for the players, because just like a knockout, right? Where what happens when the pressure is quote unquote knocked out? Just like when the players, all of their momentum is in fatigue, and then they take another hit, they would be knocked out. What happens to the encounter when all of the pressure is in whatever that's called, that's the equivalent of fatigue, and another player does another interact action, which would move a pressure, but there's none to move, so now something happens. And it should be a climactic trigger of some sort. It doesn't necessarily always mean that it would end the encounter, but maybe it gives them a huge boon. Like all of a sudden there's a huge shift. Maybe all players can, move momentum, or maybe all players can, maybe a monster is now like easy to hit for the rest of the encounter, right? Like the boss monster. Who knows? But I think that there's a really cool sort of incentivizer. So now the players aren't just trying to punch their way through everything because they see this pressure. Now, what does the pressure do for the GM? And this was really fun for me, because it's one of those things of like, some of these things might not make sense unless you understand how the monsters work, and so we would talk about that. But we've already talked about hearts, so it's like it might give a monster, like it might fill up one of their hearts. Like one of their hearts is almost done and whoop, fills back up because I just spinned one of the pressure. Or it fortifies a heart, which we talked about that before, where it's like you don't chip away at it. You have to do the max damage of that heart to get rid of it. That would suck. There could be special, on the boom die, right? So if you roll a tactics die, you could give a monster another tactics die to however many they have, which means it's like giving them an extra attack. That sucks, right? So there's all kinds of fun stuff that can happen. But again, this goes back to that idea of hopefully there's some randomizers here. So I don't want the GM necessarily saying, I'm going to now use this to hit you with like 5 hits, right? Because that's when they're like choosing for players to die, which I know sometimes people love that tactical, like, oh, it's the GM versus the players, sort of a chess match. I'm not really into that. I like sort of the randomization. So it's how do you figure out how to kind of randomize this a little bit? So like I said here, all of these things above might be in some sort of small little table, a D4 table. And that's what this is saying here. And so it's like, oh, I'm going to spin one of these. I can say this is the monster who's going to spin one of these dice, roll a D4. All right, he gets another heart. Or roll a D4. Oh, he's getting another tactic die. Sorry. That's really fun to me. This alone, this little section, this momentum equivalent, which is now going to be pressure for the GM, that was inspired by this quote by Mike Mearls. This one on Substack, by the way. That got me jazzed for this thing. Not enough people say the word jazzed. And I'm saying it right now because I got totally jazzed about having those kind of encounters now, because there's so many cool things I want to, mainly because I want to build the interact actions for the players. Like I want to build that dynamic encounter where you're like, oh, here are things that you can mess with. And guess what? It isn't just cool thematically to mess with them, but it's actually, shifting the pressure. And that sounds fun to say. Anyways, if you have thoughts, comments, again, drop them wherever. All right, what else do we need to look at? We talked about wounds already. Oh, Oh yeah, we got that out. We talked about wounds already. We talked about these actions. These got shifted around. I'm still thinking about zones. I don't know if I originally put in here squares and hexes, but I might not do squares and hexes anymore. I might switch that up again. I might go back to some sort of zone, what I did a long time back ago, because I just want to make it easy. Once again, I'm trying to make this fun and fast, but it'll probably be square and hex compatible, that kind of thing, but we'll figure it out. I don't know what the name is for reactions or triggered actions, or, in Scattered Isles, I use triggered. I know that Vagabond uses off turn, and then reaction is kind of ubiquitous. Like reaction is definitely something that everybody utilizes, or at least it's familiar. We go through attack examples, grazing, which is definitely from Cosmere RPG. Love that idea. How do you can boost a power die? I gotta go back through here and make sure it's cleanly written. Here's the conditions. I would love your comments and thoughts on conditions. Which names you like, right? Exposed versus vulnerable, guarded versus protected, etc. I kind of know which ones I like, but I want to hear what other people like. This is going to be the reference card for players. I think it's just going to have this, right? You're going to have this injury system so they know what to roll. It's going to have a list of the conditions so they can be like, oh yeah, this is the condition I have. Boom, that's it. What are the actions? And then what are my options when I use momentum? I think it's probably going to be 2 cards. Like this is going to be 1 card front and back. This is going to be another card front and back. And you just flip them. I think that'd be nice. All right. Now we get into character creation. This is probably the bigger thing that I've been working on since last I was on here and we were chit-chatting. Here's a mock-up character sheet that was fun to make. It's a little busy. And I've moved some stuff around just to kind of experiment. But here's a mock-up character sheet. Some of these names are already changed, right? So this is now, kin is now potentially origin. Archetype is now personality. And then class is now role, right? And so here's a little description of those. Once again, I'd be curious. Are there some people out there that like kin over origin or origin over kin? Archetype versus personality. And then role, I think, is going to fit. Right, I think we're going to stick with role. So what are these things? In essence, your origin is, I'm trying to make this a toolkit, right? We're still trying to make this not a generic toolkit, but we're trying to make this a broad sort of like, you can run any kind of style game you'd like in it. And eventually it's going to be very modular when we get down to the GM section. But when it comes to your origin, it's a combination of your physical build and your sort of lineage, right? And so I tried to make this intuitive in a way. And so you have, for instance, if you wanted to be like a dwarf, that might be a hardy physical build and maybe an ancient, lineage, right? Maybe. Or it might be, if you're a human, that was sort of like an adaptable common, right? That's sort of like your classic human. I haven't built out features yet. I got to figure out what I want to do for those. I mentioned it before, but I like the 0 conditions and skills. I know. Those are good thoughts. But you should see the skill list on here now, Shane. You should check out the skill list. I don't know if you've been to the page yet, but I kind of like the skill list as is at the moment. I feel like that's finally in a good place. So this is your combination, physical build, lineage, combine those, and that gives you sort of like where you come from, right? Your quote-unquote ancestry. And so here's the swift ancient is your elf, hardy wild might be more dwarfy, bear folk type stuff. Mighty blessed is your Aasimar, or you're like a divine champion or paladin-ish type person. Swift hybrid, half-elf ranger. So this is sort of, I shouldn't even say ranger, just half-elf. But these are sort of examples. And then you assign your attributes. Now, personality, this is where I need a lot of help. I'm not going to lie to you. Oh! Yes, late night designing, buddy. I probably need to get some sleepy sleep soon. But it is what it is. It is what it is. There's a lot of consonants at the beginning of your name. Cassant. I can't try it. So this is where I'd be very interested in people jumping on here. I should probably put this all in red, this whole section here in red, because the idea is that your origin is going to give you some attribute buffs, right? It's going to give you some attribute buffs. It might make some of your effort die certain numbers. It might give you bonuses to movement, those kind of things. But then when you get into your personality, this is like your, again, I could say archetype, right? Like you're the grizzled veteran or the roguish scoundrel. This is like your Han Solo. This is like your Geralt or Wolverine. And the idea was then to say, oh, this is the skill you have mastery in, and these are some skills you have excellence in, and these are some skills you're good in. But I really found it tough. Like, you'll see that endure is all over the damn place, and that labor is up high for me. I kept like, that's just how my brain worked. And so I really need other people to kind of go through here and talk about what are other archetypes. Like, what archetypes in here suck that don't really fit the mold, or they're sort of like, I'm really grasping at straws, and it's like maybe 2 or 3 archetypes are kind of the same. Or is there a reordering of skills here to make this fit better? Because I feel like there's probably a lot of these archetypes that feel too similar. And then there's some other ones that are like the innocent, pure-hearted individual, which is kind of like Aang from Avatar: The Last Airbender. That one felt good, right? Because it's more persuade is your masterful one, or sort of like, etc. Anyways, I'd be curious. I'd be curious what people think. So I'd love if people went through this thing with like a critical, not a critical eye, just like a, advisory eye. Let's say that. No, it's pronounced no one, don't worry. You got it, buddy. Now, I haven't gone into classes. That's the next thing I'm going to get into. But this is now going to be, let me switch over to the other one. Boom. There's classes. Here we go. This is now going to be roles. And let's go ahead and erase everything here, because it's all gone. Right? All gone. Because now I'm kind of getting more influence from something like the Cypher system. The Cypher system, I think, has not in the sort of Mad Libsy way that it creates its characters, which I think is awesome. I think it has such a cool little Mad Libsy sort of approach to characters. It's like, I'd butcher it. But it has this cool little, like, you fill in the blanks of 3 different things, and that kind of creates like how you describe your character, which is really neat. But more, I'm looking at these roles, and these roles are going to be packets of information. And you're going to have probably like your damage dealers. I don't know 100%. I've got some notes off to the side, so I'm kind of reading that. Your defenders, your support and utility type of roles, your control and disruption, your mobility and recon. Maybe that's, I don't know how I feel about that one yet. Your and that's it. I'm still, there's a couple other ones that I don't know where they fit necessarily. So there might be more categories. But the idea being that you've got these different categories, and then within each one of these, you've got different roles you can choose from. And as a player, what you're going to do is you're going to select a role, and it's going to give you a list of stamina blocks. Blocks is my generic term right now. That's not going to be the working term, but it's like anytime you use an attack or an ability, you can modify it with different stuff, right? Meaning, like, just like how when you think about a caster might be able to modify something in the game Vagabond, where they go, oh, I'm going to cast this, and normally when I do this, it does a d6 touch duration instant, but if I spend a mana point, I'm going to make it 2d6, or I'm going to make it a cone, or I'm going to make it etc. So think about that, but for everybody, right? Everyone's going to have these little modifiers that they can utilize. So you're going to have these stamina blocks, these power blocks, and then these limitation blocks. And limitations comes from, I think it's Crown and Skull, where it's like the idea of I'm going to do something to myself to make this power a little bit worse or harder to pull off, but it saves some resources, right? So let me clean this up and give a better example, right? So let's say you are a fighter and you're going to do your normal attack, but you happen to have 2 momentum that are active. And so you want to spin those, right? So maybe you have a stamina block that says extra target, extra close target, right? What that means is that if I spent a momentum that could be from stamina, not just from my pool, right? But it's from my stamina pool. I could spend one, turn it into fatigue, and now I can attack 2 targets with this attack, right? Excellent. And let's say in the power one, maybe it's something like you, I don't know, crit on a 15 or higher on the roll, or something insane, right? Because power is going to be much more potent. Maybe it's like you knock all targets prone that you hit, right? Knockdown, auto, right? Or something like that. Or it's like, who knows? That's the idea, right? The idea is that the power ones are much more potent, right? And the stamina ones are a little bit more like, I don't want to say generic, but a little bit more tame. We'll say tame. Well, now, maybe you're like, I don't want to spend both these momentum. So you have in here, you have -5 to attack. And what that means is that I'm going to do both of these, which would normally cost me 2 momentum, but I'm going to also do this at -5 to attack, which saves me a momentum, right? That might sound a little complex at the moment, but once we get all this, like I got to get all the verbiage down, but it's going to end up, I think, feeling really nice because then you as a player are going to be able to just look at your array of modifiers real quick that are going to be listed on your character sheet, which are going to be listed right here, right? You've got a couple things here, you got a couple things here, a couple things here, and you go, okay, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to hit both targets and I'm going to knock them both down, but I've got a higher chance of missing, right? That kind of thing. So I think that's going to be really fun. And the other thing is it's going to have a passive, right? And so this passive, for instance, might be something like, if this is a fury-based damage dealer, that's kind of like your barbarian-ish, right? Maybe that is some sort of rage kind of mechanic. I'm getting very generic here, right? So when you select a role, you're going to get these features. Select a role and get the following, right? So you're going to get 1 passive. You're going to get a stamina blocks, right? And what this means is that you're going to get access to 6, but you have to choose, right? Choose 2. Because what's going to happen is later on, as you level, you get more, right? And there's a good chance that what I'll probably end up doing is that stamina blocks are modifiers. This is actually, I'm glad we're talking. I'm glad we've decided to talk about this because I think this is helping me. Whereas these are modifiers, where these are full powers or actions or stunts, right? That feels good to me because now you have this concept of when you can choose this ability, and this is like and once again, you're going to have access to 6. Something like that. And so these are your like actual powers, right? So now you have down here, I don't know, what would be like a jumping stomp area effect, whatever, I don't know. And then these are ways to modify it to get more people involved or more modifications to the ability. Or these could be just modifiers to basic attacks, right? Like these are just stuff you can do. And then you can always add these limitations. But I don't know how many limitations there are going to be, right? Class specific. Also, or I mean, role specific. Now, this is going to be the hardest part to design, right? Probably. Because it's about getting the flavor down and figuring out all these roles and then putting those in there. I think once that's happened, we're golden. This whole section can be gone now because we already explained skills earlier. And that pretty much takes us, once this gets tackled, then you're going to assign your efforts or assign your proficiencies. What do I call that again? Effort die? Yeah, no, it's your effort die. You're going to assign your effort die, and then you're going to assign your modifiers. You get a bond, ready to roll. And that should be character creation. So I think that's coming along nicely. I just have to get feedback, and I have to figure out features, get feedback on some of this, get feedback on some of this, which is these personalities. And then I've got to brainstorm. And once again, if people have ideas for how to break these up and think about what roles might exist in there, more power to you. I'm all about it. So that would be fun. What else? Powers. We no longer need this section technically because those powers are going to be wrapped into the roles. Will there be multi-classing? Multi-rolling? I don't know. To be determined. To be determined. That I don't know of yet. Probably. I think it'd be fun. I always like that kind of stuff. So odds are yes. Odds are yes. Currently, do I know what they will be? I do not. Mainly mention it for the conditions. Oh, conditions. I'll have to check the year 0 conditions then, buddy. I don't know the year 0 engine conditions off the top of my head. We can kind of look them up. Let's look real quick. Year 0 conditions. Let me see if we have a list of conditions. You might have to just shoot that to me, Shane. I don't see it offhand, and so you might have to shoot that to me. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'm not worrying about it yet. Shane, I was just saying, if you shoot me those conditions, just shoot them on Discord or something. I'll take a look at those. Multi-class, I'm just putting it there because I think that it's fun, but I'm not going to worry about it nearly right now. But it is fun. Assigning effort, I feel good about. I feel good about those things. Powers, I feel good about. And then we get into the DM stuff. Yep. And encounter design. So at this point in time, I think I'm good. I got comments coming in. I never see it brought up as a key feature. I don't really understand multi-classing. I never see it brought up as a key feature, and it's always more as a fun fact or to enable some silly combo. Maybe I've never seen it done well though. That's a fair point, because here's the thing: is I've thought about just having in here. I think it's probably cleaner to just do hybrids, right? Where it's like you can have this sort of like in this hybrid section, you can have things like I don't know, like the Gish, right? So, oh, hey, Iguana, good to see you, buddy. I know that icon, because I totally agree with you, buddy. Is that multi-classing? I did a ton. I love multi-classing, but not necessarily from a playing perspective. I didn't gameplay a lot of multi-classers, but I did a lot of theory crafting. But that was back in the old school, like when I was playing a lot of 3E and 4E. I did a lot of multi-classing, and even when I was a 5E player, when I was going to like cons and playing, my buddy and I would really try and synergize characters, and so we did a lot of multi-classing. I think it was just one of those things that it was more of a downtime hobby as a player when I wasn't running a game as a GM. That's what multi-classing was to me. It was the theory crafting and gave you something to do to continue to think about the game when you didn't have like a lot of downtime mechanics or a GM that was contacting you. So I agree with that. I think that I would probably do hybrids as a optional role. But I'm just going to leave this in there as a maybe, because it's not necessarily. Let me put it this way. I'll put it down here. Not necessarily. Well, it's a question of, do you get multiple roles over time, right? And I think that flavors it differently, because we're not thinking about classes here. It's not like you are a fighter mage, or you are a bard, or let's say like a paladin warlock, right? Classic. It's not like you're trying to do that. It's like, I am primarily a defender, but I now do more damage, right? So it's because these are roles and not classes. I think this idea of multi-role is a little bit interesting, right? It's a little different than saying multi-classing. But that might be, I might be just, that might be semantics. I don't know 100%. Let me see. Let me browse through and see if there's anything else that needs to be discussed tonight. We're almost at an hour. Fabula Ultima is essentially a multi-class game, and you really enjoyed how it worked out. I hear a lot of people talk about Fabula Ultima, and I might have purchased the rules at one point in time, but I don't think I've gone through it yet. I've definitely not played it. But I definitely need to give it a look-see, a little look-see-loo, because I've heard it enough. I've heard it enough that I need to. All right, anything else? Sorry, I know I'm just scrolling through pages. This needs to be refreshed, because that is now classes and roles. I think all that looks good. Zones. I still need to think about zones. Let's think about it now. I've got 8 minutes. So let me think about zones. Currently, I'm thinking about hexes and squares, but that's because I was recently... Oh, you should read through it at least. It's well laid out. I will. I definitely will. I just haven't gotten to it. I think I was on the new train, so I was getting all the new games as they were coming out, and so I just haven't gone back to... And I know Fabula Ultima is not old, not super old, but I think I've just been in the... I think when it came out, I was probably in the thralls of 5e still. And since I've been out of the thralls of 5e, more in the designer phase, I think I've been just in whatever the newest stuff are coming out, so I could understand the trends of where things are going. So movement. What about handling multi-classing in the way that Shadow the Demon Lord handles it? I thought about that too. That is a great question, Shane. It is a monumental undertaking. My hat is off to Shadow the Demon Lord and Shadow of the Weird Wizard. I love Shadow the Weird Wizard, and my friends absolutely adored it. And so those that don't know Shadow the Weird Wizard, what it does is in essence you start, I can pull it up, but in essence you start out with let's say like 10 options at first level of different classes. It's probably more than that. It might be 20 or 15. You have 15 options, and each one of those has like 3 powers, and you're going to get 1 power at like first level, or a couple powers maybe. And then when you hit like 3rd level, you choose your expert class, which there's like 20 options for those. And then when you hit like and what happens is that first it's like these 3, you're going to end up with 3 different classes, right? But they're more like specialized as they go. So like the first classes you have options to are like fighter, very like wizard. They're very like broad. And then the next ones are a little bit more specialized in terms of their like naming conventions, like a witch hunter or something like that. And then your final ones are very specialized. And what's cool is that the class you choose at first level, you still get powers of it like every like odd number. So it's like maybe that first level class you chose, you get a power at 1, 2, and then like 5, and then like 7. And then the next class you choose at 3rd, you're going to get a power at like 3rd and something else. But it's a really cool idea. That's a good question, Shane, in terms of could we utilize that as a springboard? The only issue is that I don't want to use specific classes, whereas Shadow of the Demon Lord and Shadow of the Weird Wizard are very specific classes, and I want to try and lean more into roles because this is somewhat setting agnostic, that I don't want to get too pinned in. Zones are my white whale. I have so many ideas on how I want to do them and all the benefits they have, but I can never find a project or game theme that where they feel like they fit. Ending up with 3 different classes sounds like 4th edition tiers of play. It was almost more like 3rd edition with Paragon. I think 3rd edition had the Paragon and the Epic, which was, I think 4th edition had it as well. I think they ended up with it, but I think 3rd edition originally had like Paragon paths, which were really cool. But Shadow of the Demon Lords one is wild. Let me go ahead and I'll pull it up real quick. It's always good for a look. Zones are, yeah, I've had some issues with zones in the past too, where I've had some successes with them, and then I've had some major failures with them. But I do like them. The other thing I wrote in there, let me pull this up first, and then we'll come back to that. That's good for now. I just have to sign in. This is what the people come for: watching someone stare at a screen while they're signing into their OneDrive account. That's where the magic happens. What is this? I don't want to see Copilot. The other thing I put on there, I'm not going to scroll to it right now because I'm trying to get into OneDrive, but the other thing I put on there is I do like how Daggerheart has the very simple conventions of spacing, where they just kind of do that, like a pencil is close, the long side of a piece of paper is far, and anything else farther than that is, something like that, where it's like the long side of the piece of paper is near. If the minis are touching, then it's like adjacent. Like, there's something I really like about that as well, right? Where you get to still use those terms like close, far, and near, like ICRPG does, but you do it in a way that is still not just like guesstimating, right? So I could be very much swayed to either doing zones or doing that sort of Daggerheart convention. All right. I think we have it pulling up. 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Ending up with 3 different classes sounds like that's the same comment. It's hanging. There we go. Shadow of the Weird Wizard. Let's go back into this beast. I really enjoyed playing this. I unfortunately have a campaign, or like most things, it's a hanging campaign, unfortunately, at the moment. But I will get back to that one because this was a really fun game. A lot of D6 rolling, and that got a little bit of a headache at times, trying to like remember how many D6s someone had or didn't have, that kind of thing. But overall, it was really cool. All right, so here we are with the expert paths. We'll just read them from here to a degree. I can zoom in. Where are your novice paths? So you have these novice paths at first. Creating a character, novice paths. There they are. I think there's only 4 of them. I think your novice... Yeah, here they are. The novice paths are just fighter, mage, priest, rogue. So it starts off very simple. Like you are just one of these 4 things to start. And you get a power from it. You're like 1st and 2nd levels. And then 3rd level, you get to choose an expert path. And there's a ton of them. I mean, you have Berserker, Commander, Gladiator, Myrmidon, Ranger. There's a ton of them. And they're all very flavorful. And then at like 6th level, you get a master path. And this was the most absurd list. If we go here, these master paths, I mean, look at all these things. There are like 4 charts worth of these are all master paths. But what's neat about them is that each of them is very flavorful, and they're only like 3 abilities each. But that's a lot of creativity. There's no balance here. You better believe there's no balancing this because it's a freaking nightmare in terms of that. But like to give you an example of what it looks like is that here's the Barbarian Masterclass, Master Path, and it has 3 abilities: a 7th level one, an 8th level one, and a 10th level one. And it's in essence your level, right? So it's giving you how many hit points you get from it, how much extra damage you get. It's really neat. It's a pretty cool consideration, Shane. Hats off to that. Hats off to that idea. So, all right, let me put that in the notes. Let me put that over here real quick, and then I'll probably call it. But let's go ahead and put it in here. Do we consider having paths like with Shadow of the Weird Wizard? And I'll put in here, thanks a lot, Shane. All right. I'm going to put that in red because that's going to cause me a lot of headache, I have a feeling. That's all good. No, I'm stoked. All right. I think that's where I'm going to leave it. I enjoyed the chit chat. I'm glad people were able to pop in. If you jump on this channel or this webpage and you start looking through some of these current personalities and current origins, hit me up.